What's up, guys, and welcome back to my house. I've actually been keeping the plane here for the last few days. I had a crazy month. I mean, I had 4 weddings, one of which was in Tulum, Mexico, as well as a bunch of other obligations that led to just a crazy month, and I didn't get to do a lot of flying, so the last few days I was making up for lost time. But actually yesterday, we got to do a really cool thing. We got to take the Blue Angels pilots up in our planes. Quinn, myself, and a whole group of us went and took them to a bunch of cool landings.
Blue Angels, 9,000 feet. Who gets to do this?
Obviously, I wasn't able to film it just because it was their day off. Didn't want to intrude on that. But anyway, there's supposed to be a lot of wind blowing in later today. I can already feel it starting to pick up, so I'm gonna go ahead and get the plane back to the airport, but I figured might as well take the long way, go play on the way, but I also wanted to take a second to have the ADSB talk. You know, it's something we haven't really discussed, and there's been a little bit of controversy on people not wanting to equip their planes with ADSB, so I figured it's time we talk about it. ADSB, the good, bad, and the ugly. Okay, we are at temp. Try not to blast crap onto my driveway. A little rolling start. Okay, get up to a legal altitude above these houses. And then once we are past them, we will drop back down and play. Now we are back to a fun cruising altitude. But yeah, it's time that we talk about the ADSB thing, because I've seen a couple heated arguments online about people that are basically a little reserved to equip their aircraft with ADSB, basically on the mentality that they're going to be broadcasting their location at all times, and that people as well as the feds might be able to see it, and they might, you know, accidentally incriminate themselves over that. And for those that don't know what I'm talking about, ADSB is short for Automated Dependent Surveillance Broadcast. It's a type of transponder system that is a new requirement from the FAA as of 2020 that all aircraft are equipped with it, at least all aircraft that are going to fly above 10,000 feet or into any Charlie or Bravo airspace. And the ADSB transponder is going to send your aircraft's location as well as tail number out through satellite as well as direct air-to-air to other air traffic, so that airplanes can see where other air traffic is at. And you know, when the FAA first announced that they were going to be mandating that all aircraft within that, you know, scope were going to have to be equipped with ADSB, there was a bit of kickback originally because of the cost of equipping your airplane with ADSB. I mean, it's not cheap, but also a lot of people were uncomfortable with the fact that they would be publicly broadcasting their location for anyone to see. Now, this is something that I want to discuss. I think there was a road I've landed on right here. Beautiful little road. Nowhere to pull off of it. It's got rain ruts on both sides. Just had to scramble to get out of the way. There was a car, which is weird. I wouldn't expect a car out here. Anyway, now that I'm winded from pushing my plane out of the way in a rush, it's a fun little road. I think I've landed here once before, and when I think about it, that was the same day that I made that inspection pass at my buddy's house, which got me in hot water with the FAA. Which I did have ADSB equipped on my aircraft at the time, and it was on. And interestingly enough, they didn't bring any of that data into my investigation. And I know that a bunch of you guys have been waiting for an update on the FAA thing. I have been as well. There's actually just not been any news. We submitted our appeal. It's probably sitting on some desk at the NTSB waiting for someone to look at it. And while I think we have a really strong appeal, I don't know how much faith I have in kind of a fair judgment right now. I'm kind of a little skewed on that front. So I'm kind of guessing that they're going to rule against me again, which will allow us then to push to a civil appeals court, and I could actually have a jury, and then I think we could actually be heard a little bit more fairly. So anyway, enough about that. That is the update, that there really is no update. Yeah, there's another car. Who would have thought there'd be so much traffic? But anyway,
going back to the ADSB thing and the mentality that might be restricting certain people from equipping their aircraft, that the, you know, big brother feeling that the FAA is going to be watching or others are going to be watching because you're broadcasting your location at all times. I think that comes from a place of people being worried about incriminating themselves through their flight tracks. And to that, I just have to say, like, how are you flying that you feel like you're going to be incriminated? That would probably imply that you're deliberately violating the regulations while you're flying. And to that, I just say, hey, don't do that. Like, I want to be clear that I absolutely agree with exercising our freedoms of flight, which we have pretty amazing freedoms here in the United States. That's why you see me out playing and flying low, which is perfectly legal as long as you're over a sparsely populated area and you're maintaining 500 foot of separation from any sort of vehicle, vessel, person, or structure. At no point do I ever condone violating the regulations. Now look, we all know that the regulations are written in blood, meaning someone had to get seriously injured or killed for these regulations to come into effect. So all the regulations are there for good reason. It's to protect us, to protect our passengers, and to protect those around us. So if you're flying in a way that isn't aligning with the FARs, you should change the way that you're flying and fly legally, fly safely. This is for all of us. So anyway, don't be doing illegal stuff, fly within the regulations. And going back to the discussion of ADSB and the FAA watching you, obviously in my hearing and my whole court thing, my ADSB track did not affect my outcome. They weren't able to find any of it. And I don't know if it's just because I was too low for that flight to register with the towers or what, but they weren't able to source the data. And then going back to the idea that the FAA might just be watching your ADSB track to like basically find reasons to violate you, I did have a brief discussion with a buddy of mine who is an FAA inspector up in Montana, or at least he was, and asked him that, hey, do you guys like watch ADSB tracks to look for violations? He basically said that they barely have the time to conduct proper investigations on pilots when there are potential violations. So basically they don't have the time to just sit on a computer and look at your ADSB track trying to find violations or reasons to violate you. So I think that mentality or that thought is not very justified. It's a little bit conspiracy theorist of us, but I do want to talk about the safety factors of having ADSB, and this all kind of sparked from a conversation I had with a buddy of mine the other day. But let's get back up in the air and we'll continue this discussion.
All right, let's blast on out of here. So, what ignited this thought or this conversation on ADSB for me was a buddy of mine called me the other day and we were just catching up, chatting, and he mentioned, oh, hey, I forgot to tell you, I had a near miss the other day. And basically it came down to he was on flight following with ATC, and there was another target that popped up on his ADSB. This guy was on a perfect collision course with him. He's looking around, finally makes an evasive maneuver, and happened to see the guy and had a barrel, like a very near miss. And what he said was it was close enough that he could read the small tail numbers on the guy's plane, and it had him pretty rattled up. And it's funny because while we were talking about it, it reminded me of an instance that I had back in 2019 when I was flying to Oshkosh with Haley in my plane that had a very similar event. Basically, we were flying out over the middle of nowhere. There was no other planes around. There's no airport around. But my ADSB started yelling at me, traffic, traffic, and it showed a plane above me descending onto me with a high rate of closure. Basically, it was someone behind me approaching at me. And I'm looking around. I can't see where that guy is. Finally make a little S-turn, and as I turn back, there was a low wing. I think it might have been a twin-engine low wing that descended through almost exactly where I was flying. And that would have been a perfect example of the low wing descending onto a high wing that leads to a mid-air collision that you pretty much can't avoid without something like ADSB. And as most of you guys probably are already aware, I've struggled with fears of flying, and I still have a bit of it with me as a pilot. And one of the biggest fears of mine is a midair, simply because it's something that you have virtually no control of. It's an accident that you can look at the statistics of and see that the probability of fatalities is extremely high in mid-airs. And the more scary part is that it doesn't discriminate, meaning that it doesn't matter how many hours you have or what your experience is, it affects pilots at all different levels. So it's not something that you can train yourself out of. You know, other accident scenarios, stall spins, all of that, with the right proficiency and training, you can at least reduce your risk significantly, whereas mid-airs don't have that same ability. There's not much you can do to train yourself or prepare for a mid-air.
Now, scary fact with mid-airs is the average amount of hours that pilots involved in mid-airs have is about 5,000, meaning that this is not just happening to new pilots that might be susceptible to other types of accidents. This affects all of us universally. And up until ADSB, there really wasn't a great way to help prevent this aside from just proper scanning and see and avoid, but obviously airplanes are going to have a lot of blind spots. Like in a high wing, you're not going to be able to see above you or behind you, including directly below you, behind the wings that are above your head. There's a ton of blind spots. So the FAA's mandate with ADSB comes from them looking at the data over the past couple decades and realizing that there's been no improvement in the reduction of mid-air accidents. And so ADSB is the first big strive towards fixing this problem. And now I can tell you from personal experience, as well as talking to my buddies, that it works. It's something that when you have ADSB equipped in your airplane, both out and in, you are going to be more safe because you're going to be able to have a better awareness of aircraft around you. And now this is where I'm going to come full circle with this, that I do hear people's concerns and the discomfort in realizing that you are broadcasting your location for the world to see, that people can look up my tail number and see where I'm flying, which I don't love. Makes you feel like you have a little less privacy, but at the same time, there is zero proof that the FAA is out just watching you do what you're doing, looking for reasons to violate you. Again, don't do illegal stuff. But that kind of ends it when it comes to cons of ADSB. Also, the cost of equipping. There are more affordable options being announced all the time, but as far as cons go, they're relatively limited. And the pros come down to the fact that we're dealing with an aviation accident scenario, being a mid-air, that is almost universally fatal on all counts. And it's something that you can't train yourself out of. It's something that affects all of us universally. And this is the first really effective solution to try to combat that. So at the end of the day, I'm a supporter of ADSB, and I think we all should be equipping our aircrafts with ADSB out and having ADSB in so that we can keep an eye on it. Turn on audible alerts so your device does tell you, so you can just have a better awareness around you. I think this is something that protects not only each and every one of us, but the other pilots around us. So it's a community thing. The more of us that we can kind of get on the ADSB train, the more we can kind of combat this kind of at least really terrifying thing to me of mid-airs or the possibility of them. So yeah, I know I rambled on for kind of a while on that, but I hope that's clear, and I hope you guys can kind of agree with me a little bit on this ADSB thing. It's a little funny to me that anyone's kind of not wanting to get on board, because it really is for all of our own safety. But anyway, enough talking. Let's get back to flying.
Spilling the highway, my generator generates, I keep it running always. Okay, it's all day, turn on and operate it. Okay, it's all day, log in and activate it.
There is a river that likes to dry up this time of year, a few miles north of where I'm at. Let's go take a look and see. When it is dry, it's a really fun, long, sandy, just riverbed. Very soft sand, but it's a fun one to land at. Soft sand is an interesting beast on its own. You know, big tires are absolutely critical. Low tire pressure helps a ton. A lot of people ask me what my tire pressure is in my tires, and my usual answer is, I don't know. I put air in it every year or so, and when it looks too low, I put more air in. Mine are probably sitting at sub 4 right now because I haven't inflated them in a while, and I've been doing a lot of off-airport stuff. But yeah, soft sand, big tires are a must. Don't be pushing too hard forward to get on your mains. It's kind of a balancing act because it is a soft field, both takeoff and landing. Also, getting your tail wheel down on landing is going to help a bunch because they just turn into little pizza cutters and just cut a trench behind you, which slows you down. Great. Okay, this is the river that is absolutely dried up right now. It's all just beautiful, soft beach sand. Now the question is, where is it that we normally land? I think it's this stretch up in front of me. Yeah, that looks right. I think we'll do one pass, checking things out, and then if it looks good, come back and land. I'm showing a pretty good tailwind right now though, so maybe we look at it, turn around and land. Some decent little ruts there. It's definitely soft. We'll just be a little cautious on our approach if it doesn't look good. On final, then we do have a go around here. I see tracks. I don't know if they're airplane tracks. Yeah, they are. Or some really big three-wheeler. So this looks a little lumpy, definitely soft. So what we'll do is we'll touch down softly, and I keep the stick back, get rid of flaps, and I'm not pushing hard on the brakes. Just because this sand can be grabby and want to put you on your nose. And here is the part where taxiing is a lot of work. This is some soft sand. I am at 3,600 RPM just to taxi right now. That's because my tail wheel is cutting quite the trench. This is when big tires are an absolute must. This isn't like a no-go at all on small tires. And then for takeoff, so I've retrimmed, I'm full forward trim. Jeez, that sand is heavy. Look at the trench I cut. But anyway, I'm not gonna use any brakes to help load the prop. I'm just gonna go to full throttle. I'll do a light lift, but keeping my nose high with the tail, and then pull it off the ground. Obviously, my plane has a great power to weight ratio, so even soft sand takeoffs are pretty much a non-event. But yeah, there we go. We landed on a road, on a side hill, and on a sandy river bottom.
There you go. Safe and sound back at the airport, beat the wind back. It's actually pretty nice out, except for how hot it is. I don't know what's going on. We're on like our third entry into summer, where I think fall should be starting by now. But anyway, we're getting close. 2 weeks away from High Sierra fly-in. Super excited for that. I hope to see at least a few of you guys out there. So comment below if you're gonna be out there. Make sure to stop by and say hi to me if you are. And yeah, before I wrap this one out, I do wanna take a quick second to say a huge shout out and thank you to my friends over at Squarespace for sponsoring yet another one of my videos. And for those of you that don't know, Squarespace is the ultimate way to build a website and run your business. You start with one of their award-winning templates that are already like these beautifully, perfectly designed websites. You pick the one you like the most, you craft it into your own beautiful, professional-looking website that works on both desktop as well as mobile, and they have features for every industry. So it doesn't really matter what you're trying to do with your website, be it an online store, personal blog, just a digital business card for you to be able to tell people where to go to get your contact info. You're gonna be able to do that very easily with Squarespace, no experience required. So if you haven't yet, head over to squarespace.com for a free trial, and when you're ready to purchase, make sure to use code Trent Palmer at checkout. That'll get you 10% off. Thank you again, Squarespace, for sponsoring this one, and you guys know the drill. Like this video if you do, subscribe if you haven't, come be my wingman. We'll see you on the next one. Peace.